TV.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -10. It's -9 in Smiths Falls. Both locations feeling a bit colder in the wind. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Outgoing American President Donald Trump left the White House on Marine One, a short helicopter ride to Joint Base Andrews. This happened in the past hour. Trump made a short speech once at Andrews, thanking his family and staff for their work and also thanking supporters.
And I want to thank all of the great people of Washington, D.C., all of the people that we worked with to put this miracle together. So, have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Trump is now on a government plane heading to Florida. Now, Joe Biden swears the oath of office at noon Eastern today, becoming the 46th president of the United States. Now, we will carry that ceremony live on City News. Julie Walker telling us this morning Biden will then join a slimmed-down inaugural parade and a nighttime concert that will be broadcast because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
A slew of celebrities will participate, marking the return of the A-listers to the White House after they largely avoided Trump. Among those in the lineup, Tom Hanks, Bruce Springsteen, Justin Timberlake, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Kerry Washington. Lady Gaga will sing the national anthem at the Capitol, with Jennifer Lopez and Garth Brooks contributing musical performances.
Now, aides are describing the incoming president's inaugural address as a forward-looking speech that will make little or no mention of his predecessor. City News time 9:02. Time for traffic and weather together with the latest on the drive in Ottawa and the Valley. Here's Gord Taylor.
Well, maintenance work today on the 417 between Anderson and Highland Road near St. Isidore. Off and on lane reductions till 5 today. Also on the 417 between Arnprior and Highway 7. Off and on lane reductions for maintenance from 9 till 4 today. Also watch out for construction at Fallowfield and Larkin, Booth at the Chaudière Crossing, and Innis at 10th Line. Take comfort knowing the CPP fund will be there. CPP investments help to ensure the CPP fund remains sustainable and secure for millions of Canadians. Visit cppinvestments.com. Now, the latest forecast for Ottawa and the Valley. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Some flurries for the first half of the day. Otherwise, sun and cloud are high, just -9. The average high about -6. We get into the snow overnight, 2 to 3 centimeters overnight, another 3 to 7 centimeters through the day on Thursday. Tomorrow's high just -2. For today, the high -9.
And right now in Ottawa, it's -10 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's -9. City News time 9:03. The police watchdog in our province investigating the death of a man who lost vital signs while in custody at Ottawa's police station on Elgin. Special investigation unit says an autopsy is scheduled for today on the 49-year-old who died yesterday. It says the Ottawa Police Service arrested a man on a drug warrant late in the afternoon yesterday and was taken to the police station and placed in a cell. He was found unresponsive mid-evening, and emergency medical services found him without vital signs. The agency says the man died in hospital soon after. Stats Canada says the annual pace of inflation did slow in December. The Consumer Price Index up 0.7% compared with 1 year earlier. That compares with a year-over-year increase of 1.0% in November. Prices rose in 6 of the 8 major components on a year-over-year basis in December. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. We made it. We made it. We made it to the last day of the Trump presidency. That was something, all right. Good morning. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News. We have a very busy program ahead for you. The inauguration of Joe Biden is, of course, the biggest story in the world. And if you're out and about today and can't catch it on television, don't worry. We have it right here for you. Our coverage out of Washington will begin at 11, and we will stick with it until it's over. And fingers crossed, prayers said that everything goes well today for our American friends. It's been a wild 4 years, hasn't it? What a ride. And it's been, at times, an insane few months, hasn't it, since the U.S. election back in November. But that is for later this morning. Before then and until then, look, there's plenty happening in this country, right, to keep us occupied. And I think the big story in Canada, it continues to be vaccines. And a vaccination rollout that is coming under a lot of well-earned scrutiny because it appears to be going off the rails, to be quite honest with you. And Mr. Trudeau, the Prime Minister, look, he tried to pull a fast one on the Canadian media yesterday. I don't know what else you call it. It was sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. Burying the lead. In the newspaper business, I would say, Mr. Trudeau, you buried the lead. Yeah, it's getting tiresome, really. His office informs the national media. This is the Prime Minister's daily itinerary. There's going to be a news conference, media briefing. This was yesterday's charade. You know, the usual Rideau Cottage thing. We're all familiar with it by now. Who needs Parliament at all? We have Rideau Cottage. And he fails to mention what turns out to be the biggest and most important news story of the day for Canadians, one that is going to have ripple effects all across the country, from every big city to every small town, from the Toronto Convention Centre to a long-term care home in rural New Brunswick. Doesn't even mention it. Oh, how many doses of the Pfizer vaccine will be delivered next week? Well, I think the Toronto Sun's front page answers that question for everyone this morning, don't you think? Did you see that? Isn't that epic right there? Isn't that an epic front page from Big Fat Zero? A big fat zero. Not a vaccine shipment cut in half, not deliveries that will be cut by 80%. No, that would be bad enough. Now we learn there will be none. Nada, zilch, zero, nothing from Pfizer next week at all next week. And the Vancouver Sun this morning, which is not a tabloid-style newspaper, it reports this morning that the province of British Columbia, population more than 5 million, not a single dose of either vaccine. Not a single dose of either vaccine for the entire province. And yet there's Prime Minister Trudeau doing his thing with the media, taking questions over the telephone. He can't spill the beans, right? He can't be truthful to Canadians. Instead, what does he do? He leaves the dirty work to Major General Danny Fortin. You break it to him. It's kind of sneaky, isn't it? Don't you think that's kind of sneaky? I think that's kind of sneaky. Stand there for 30 minutes. You don't even mention that? So, yeah, we're going to get back into this with your political fix this morning right after the 9:30 news. I think there are a pair of must-read items in this morning's news media. Tasha Keratin of the National Post, Bill Curry in the Globe and Mail, because a lot of people, I'm one of them, maybe you're one of them too. Aren't you thinking, why is this happening to us? Why is this happening to Canada, such a disruption like this, from millions of doses down to zero? Doesn't it make you wonder, are we being singled out, for example? Don't you think that? I don't think anyone can say for sure. Tasha Keratin notes in the Post this morning that this government hasn't built a great relationship with big brand name pharmaceutical companies. It hasn't been an industry-friendly government when it comes to what is a very research-intensive business, the pharmaceutical industry. And, you know, and she ties it into the never-ending liberal promise that it will someday offer universal pharmacare. Someday. You live long enough to see it. So read her column in the Post today. It's certainly an angle worth exploring. And then Bill Curry's reporting in the Globe, it just fuels the speculation because he reports that Pfizer wants very specific measures that would be very good for Pfizer to be included in the next federal budget. The company, for example, does not want higher corporate taxes. It wants to be able to book profits in lower tax jurisdictions, and it wants tax credits for any investments it makes into research and development. And it has made all of this known in a pre-budget submission to the Department of Finance and ahead of Chrysler Freeland's next budget. So nobody of any authority is on the record saying one thing has to do with the other, but you just can't help but wonder what's going on. Since the shipments have all but dried up because of the retooling of this European factory. Oh, there's that. And then we learned yesterday as well, later in the day, that Mr. Trudeau hasn't even bothered to telephone the CEO of Pfizer or do a Zoom call with the CEO of Pfizer. Unlike the Prime Minister of Israel, who's called him 17 times, or the President of the European Union, who's called and made the appeal, at least they've managed to pick up the phone, for crying out loud. Apparently, Mr. Trudeau can't even manage that. That nugget came out of one of the political talk shows yesterday afternoon and certainly lit up Canadian political Twitter. So, that's one story that's in the mix for us. You're welcome to have your say on it. Another issue that I would like to discuss has more of an Ontario focus. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a hot issue for many weeks now, and it's only getting hotter. And I hope I can engage you in a discussion on this during our talkback hour this morning, coming up between 10 and 11 o'clock. It's something I've covered for a long time, and that's paid sick days for Ontario workers. I want to ask you where you stand on this issue, paid sick days for Ontario workers who don't have paid sick days right now as part of some collective agreement or workplace benefit program with their employer. So I'm sure you've heard Premier Ford is under an intense amount of pressure to bring in some kind of paid sick day program for Ontario workers who don't have paid sick days right now. There were paid sick days under the previous Liberal government of Kathleen Wynne. Oh, don't you miss those good old days? An employer, any employer, had to give every employee 2 paid sick days a year. 10 in all, 10 days off a year, but 2 of them were paid sick days. The other 8 unpaid. Now, the Wynne Liberals, they did that as a whole series of labor reforms in the dying days of their government. I mean, they were on their last legs. They had been in power for 15 years, and it was an attempt to make nice with big labor, organized labor, because voters were fleeing, left-wing voters were fleeing for the NDP, and this was a kind of a last gasp attempt to win over some left-wing voters from the NDP. Now, the bill passed. The votes didn't materialize. The Liberals, you remember, they were reduced to a rump of a party, the minivan party, and Doug Ford won in a landslide. The NDP became the official opposition. But for a brief time there, workers who had never had paid sick days before had 2 paid sick days a year, 2 of them. And then Doug Ford got rid of them and froze the minimum wage, too. Anyway, this all happened long before anyone had ever heard of COVID-19. And Doug Ford is saying, I'm not bringing in paid sick days. There's a federal program. And he's right. There's a federal program, Canada Sickness Recovery Benefit. 2 weeks worth of paid sick days are there, $450 a week after tax. But the problem is, good luck trying to get the money into your bank account. It's apparently a bureaucratic nightmare to try and apply for this thing. So you have many on the left. They want employers. This is the thing you have to keep in mind. It's the business that would have the paid sick days. It's not the government. They want businesses to offer paid sick days to employees who don't have any paid sick days. The business would pay for it, not the government. So I really want to know what you think about this. It's a huge issue right now for two reasons. First of all, the last thing we need are people going to work because they're afraid of losing a day's pay. They have COVID. They spread it around the workplace. We don't want workers spreading COVID-19 in the workplace. That's one issue, okay? The other is, how many of these businesses are really in a position right now to be offering a new workplace benefit, paid sick days? Most of them are wondering if they're going to be able to meet payroll by the end of the month as it is. Some of them might not even be open for business right now. So I want to ask you, we're going to do this during our talkback hour at 750-1310 between 10 and 11 o'clock, 750-1310. Should employers in Ontario be forced to offer paid sick days to workers who don't already have them? This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News,
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
And again, I want to just in leaving, I want to thank our Vice President, Mike Pence, and Karen. I want to thank Congress because we really worked well with Congress, at least certain elements of Congress. But we really did. We've gotten so much done that nobody thought would be possible. But I do want to thank Congress, and I want to thank all of the great people of Washington, D.C., all of the people that we worked with to put this miracle together. So, have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And that was within the last half hour or so. Outgoing President Donald Trump, First Lady Melania Trump by his side. They are not welcoming Joe Biden and the incoming First Lady Jill Biden to the White House today. They're not attending the inauguration ceremony in the U.S. Capitol, with President-elect Joe Biden being sworn in today. Our coverage here on City News begins at shortly after 11 o'clock, and we'll keep with it until its conclusion. The day is finally here. It is the 20th of January, 2021. And Peter Wagner joins us right now. He is managing editor for our sister station in Vancouver, News 1130, covering U.S. news from Ferndale, Washington. Good morning, Peter.
Well, good morning, Rob. Thanks so much for having me today.
It's so great to hear from you, and I'm sure you've been up and you've been watching it and listening to the coverage on the U.S. cable news networks. What are your thoughts so far this morning, Peter?
Well, this is such a profound moment for American democracy. It's a date fixed in our sort of collective calendar, our constitutional calendar, and it's something that we've come to expect to be so regular. And as everything has been over the last 4 years, today is just so highly irregular. It was so odd to watch the sitting president not engage in the ritual that is the symbol of everything about democratic power and authority, and just decide to walk away from the White House to pomp and circumstance and not participate in the ceremony. It's only happened so many times in American history. Typically, it was the biggest events were very early on when the democracy was quite shaky and we didn't quite have our footing yet. But for as long as we've been at this, I'm a little stunned to see that we're not having this grand moment of national unity, but also to see that the progress of the inauguration is carrying on, regardless of that outgoing President Trump doesn't have to be there to acknowledge the transfer. It happens whether he's there or not. So my biggest takeaway this morning, I think, is I'm just in awe of the fact that all of this tradition continues even amid the events of the last weeks and months and years.
How are you? You're an American, as you have dual citizenship, right?
Yes.
Yeah, dual citizenship. So how would you describe your own feelings personally right now? Are you anxious, nervous, worried, optimistic, hopeful? All of the above. Peter, I'm curious.
It's the soup of all of the above. I think there's a great sense of relief among many people, me especially, just in the sense of perhaps things getting back to a kind of normal, but I'm also anxious that I'm not sure that normal served us very well before. So I'm anxious to see if this president will take the mandate that he has and the mantle that he has to actually drive America forward and sort of unwrap some of the lack of progress of the last 4 years and, regain our image to the world. I have lived so much of my life straddling the border. I live just 10 minutes south of the Peace Arch Crossing, right near Vancouver. I can see Vancouver from high points near my house. And so my entire life has always been this intermingling of our two countries. And we've always felt so much the same for as much as we are different. But the last 4 years have just felt like we have never been farther apart. And I would come to work back when I could still drive into work before coronavirus, and it would be the question of what is going on. And so I think there's a sense of relief for me that perhaps we're going to be in a place again where we're not, as an American, I'm not feeling like I'm always having to say I have no idea what's going on, or to answer for those totally rightful and outrageous moments that we've experienced. I'm ready for the country to move forward, and I'm very ready for noon Eastern today. I'll tell you that much.
Okay. A final, let's listen to another clip. This was, again, outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump saying, "We will be back in some form." Listen to this.
The future of this country has never been better. I wish the new administration great luck and great success. I think they'll have great success. They have the foundation to do something really spectacular. And again, we put it in a position like it's never been before, despite the worst plague to hit since, I guess you'd say 1917, over 100 years ago. And despite that, the things that we've done have been just incredible. And I couldn't have done it without you. So just a goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form.
We will be back in some form. And it's been said in the news media quite often over the last few weeks that Trump may be gone now for all intents and purposes, but Trumpism lives on, Peter. And if it lives on how, do you think? Yeah.
I think it lives on in the way that many people who took the mantle of Trump, the MAGA hat wearing, the Trump sign crowd, the angry rally attendees, we see that in the kind of politics they choose to engage in going forward. I think a really prominent example here in Washington State was we had a race for governor. Washington State has not delivered the governor's chair to a Republican for my entire lifetime. It's just not the way the math of the state works. And for all of that time, up until recently, Republican candidates have run great campaigns and, for the most part, have realized that the math generally is not on their side in this state. But what we saw was the Republican gubernatorial candidate in this last election cycle use the Trump playbook. We saw him contesting election results, filing lawsuits against the Secretary of State, claiming without any evidence that the election here in Washington State was stolen, and has never provided any evidence to that claim, and has now withdrawn his lawsuits. But I think the way that it lives on is the way that it becomes prevalent or not prevalent within the other areas of American government. So often I think we don't focus on the smaller areas of our government that become most important. It's when Trumpism comes to county councils. It's when Trumpism comes to city councils. And I can tell you, even in my community, it's a 50-50 community, but still there were many thousands of people in this community who, again, voted for Donald Trump. So I think the way that lives on is how often and how permissive we allow that to be in our entire political life. But I certainly don't see that ethos going away anytime soon. Might not be as mainstream as it has been for the last 4 years, but it's certainly not going anywhere.
CNN now reporting that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their oaths of office at noon. Of course, we'll have that for you here on City News, 101.1 FM, 1310 AM. What do you think the message of Joe Biden's speech will be today?
Well, I've seen reporting so far that it's not going to mention President Trump. So I think that tells us pretty surely that it's going to be in the grand tradition of all great American speeches, not about what America is, but about what America can be and what America can become. I think that is a great recurring theme of great American presidential oration, is the painting not of a picture of American carnage, but of a bright future. Lincoln talked about a new birth of freedom in the Gettysburg Address. That is what we strive to do always. And I think that his tone, Kamala Harris's tone, will be focused on that, on what's next with coronavirus, on what's next in the wake of an active insurrection against the Capitol, and how we have to come back together again in a way, hopefully, much more successfully than we did at the end of the U.S. Civil War in 1865.
Peter Wagner, thank you for your time this morning, sir.
Thanks so much for having me, Rob.
Managing Editor, News 1130 in Vancouver, covers U.S. news from his perch in Ferndale, Washington. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 10 degrees, feeling like minus 19. It's minus 9 and feeling like minus 13 in Smith Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Out with the old, in with the new. President Donald Trump boarded a flight to Florida this morning, shortly before 9 o'clock, from Joint Base Andrews. Donald Trump's last words publicly as president were, "We'll be back in some form." Just after noon, Joe Biden will be sworn in as the 46th American president. City News will cover the inauguration ceremony starting shortly after 11 o'clock this morning. The SIU has taken over investigation of a man's death in Ottawa police custody. A man arrested on a drug warrant yesterday afternoon was taken to the police station. While in a cell, the 49-year-old lost vital signs. He was rushed to hospital but pronounced dead. An autopsy is scheduled for today. StatsCan says the annual pace of inflation did slow a bit in December. The consumer price index up 0.7% compared with the year before. We are still waiting for the central bank to update the economic forecast, the Infratrade decision offering a glimpse into its outlook for COVID-19 recovery. The province is ramping up the workplace inspections to make sure COVID protocols are being followed. What started as a big box store blitz last weekend around Toronto being expanded province-wide. 300 officers will fan out inspecting big box stores, restaurants that are providing takeout, essential services like gas stations, as well as farms to make sure all the rules are being followed. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix. Do that every Wednesday morning. The best in the business. Two of them joining me this week. Susan Smith, Principal Blue Sky Strategy Group. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I bet you have a smile on your face.
I have a huge smile on my face, as I bet many of your listeners do.
It's a big day. It's a big day. We made it, Susan. 4 years. 4 years. Yeah. Kate Harrison's going to join us soon. Just promoted vice chair now at Suma Strategy.
Oh, good for her.
Congratulations. So you and I will start without her, and she'll just jump on the line when she calls in. Look, it's come out now. No vaccine shipments for Canada from Pfizer for a week. Zero. Okay, not cut in half. And this is going to have a ripple effect all across the country. How damaging politically is this to Mr. Trudeau, Susan?
I think that remains to be seen, Rob. The factory is retooling so it can push out more vaccines more quickly. So if Pfizer can rebound quickly, which I think is the intent, they'll be able to ship us more and more quickly, and then it'll be up to the feds to get it distributed to the provinces, and the provinces to get the jabs in the arms of their citizens. I think if the government can continue to, meet and exceed the overall timelines that they have said, which was everybody who wants a vaccine would have it by September, will be okay. It's an unfortunate blip. It's nothing that the government controls. If the factory's retooling, the factory's retooling. But if that result is that we can get more vaccines more quickly, which I think that is what the result will be, in the end, it'll be okay. It's not awesome this week. It makes people unhappy. They want those vaccines.
Sure. He's had better weeks. Mr. Trudeau's had better weeks. Kate Harrison, good morning. Kate?
Good morning.
Yeah,
sorry for the delay there.
That's okay. Congratulations, Vice Chair of Suma Strategies.
Someday I'll be the big chair.
Someday the big boss.
Congrats, Kate. That's awesome.
Thank you, Susan.
So,
Thank you very much.
we've been talking about vaccine shipments cut to zero. Epic front page for the Toronto Sun this morning. Big fat zero. No shipments for Canada from Pfizer for 1 week. Zero. I asked Susan how damaging that might be for the Prime Minister. How damaging do you think it could be for the Prime Minister politically?
Yeah, I mean, to date, Canadians have had quite a bit of patience around vaccine timelines. I don't know if yesterday's news is a turning point, but it's certainly not a positive development. You have to acknowledge, Rob, all of the things that stem from a delay in vaccine. Because there was so much pressure being applied to provinces to get the vaccine out quickly, and there was that screw up, frankly, over the holidays where that didn't happen. There's a lot of people that have one dose of the vaccination and not two. So not getting this second, or not getting this new shipment of Pfizer vaccines, does that delay the timeline for people getting their second dose? We know that scientifically it's not been tested, the efficacy of those vaccines if you go beyond a 21-day time period between your first and second dose. So are those people now with one dose going to be getting a less effective vaccine because of this delay? That's a big question that needs to be answered. And then obviously, the longer we are not vaccinated, the longer we need to stay locked down, the longer that people are out of work, the longer that people suffer from other mental and physical health consequences. So there's all of these things that surround that delay in a shipment, and sure, it
has a cascading effect. Does it? It has a cascading effect across a whole range of
and you see that Israel is up to 30% vaccination today, and if there's more delays and more shifting goalposts in terms of timing, Canadians might start getting a bit frustrated over why they're locked down and why they're still waiting for vaccines when others around the world are able to access them quickly.
Yeah, Susan, what do you think? I mean, we know what's happening in other countries, that other countries are doing better than we are.
Yeah, in some cases, but I think people understand that our geography is different than Israel. I've been to Israel. It doesn't take long to drive from tip to stem to stern in Israel to get it out. We're a bigger country. We've got geography. We're a federation. We've got to deal with provinces. There's all kinds of logistics there. And we're learning how to do this on the fly, like many other countries too. But I think people will be patient.
Okay.
Because if it's only a week, waiting, there's a delay. I think people will be patient. They just want those vaccines, and if more come in and more can be administered more quickly, then I think people will be comfortable with the pace at which it's proceeding.
Okay. Well, let me start with this question as we move along here. But are we all in agreement that there's going to be a spring election? Do we all agree on that, first of all? Kate?
I think that would have been my best educated guess. Again, a week from now, we might know whether or not yesterday's news about Pfizer is shifting the goalposts at all. Right now, from what I see in Canadian public opinion, people are satisfied that the Prime Minister is doing the best that he can. That's not the Conservative position, obviously, but that's the way the majority.
But if I had asked you last week, you would have said, "Oh, yeah, we're going to have a spring election,
that
right?"
That would have been my guess. Now, if we keep getting vaccine delays, that's not exactly a positive message that the government wants to roll on. If that rectifies itself and the government is able to say they've completed phase one on time, which is the end of March, and then they've got a positive budget, that's the kind of message that you'd probably want to go to the polls on.
What do you think, Susan? Spring election?
Yeah, I learned a long time ago in politics that spring is still the 20th of June because summer starts on the 21st of June.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of runway there. If the vaccine rollout continues at a decent pace, I think the Prime Minister has a good reason to be comfortable going to the polls. You can bet that the budget will be a blueprint for the Liberals to go to the Canadian people if need be, whether it's in the spring or in the summer or in the fall.
Okay, I do want to get your take on the whole Derek Sloan thing for the Conservatives. There may be some news on that this morning, but why don't we skip ahead and go to yings and yangs and firecrackers, since it's kind of a better segue. This was Doug Ford at his news conference yesterday.
The Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, we've been working collaboratively. I'm just angry at the situation that other countries are getting at, and nothing is more important than getting these vaccines. And if I was in his shoes, I'm sure he is doing it, but I'd be on that phone call every single day. I'd be up that guy's yin-yang so far with a firecracker, he wouldn't know what hit him from Pfizer. I would not stop until we get these vaccines.
Yeah, it was a day of zingers and humdingers for Premier Ford. Give us one more, David.
Other countries, small countries, populations of 5 million. We're part of the G7. We're a major player in the world. So this isn't directed, I want to emphasize this again, it isn't directed per se at the PM or the deputy, because I think the world of them, we're working collaboratively together. But man, we got to be on these guys like a blanket. I'd be outside that guy's house. Every time he moved, I'd be saying, where's our vaccines? Other people are getting them. The European Union's getting them. Why not Canada?
Okay. On yings and yangs and firecrackers and Doug Ford's folksy charm, as he continues to try, I guess, and say nice things about Prime Minister Trudeau, sympathetic to Mr. Trudeau. What do you think about Doug Ford's approach here, Susan Smith?
I think it's still working.
Still working? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Ford is a great communicator. I mean, he's a plain language speaker. You could argue it's kind of high school level language that he uses to appeal to people, but people understand he's a passionate guy.
Yeah.
I don't always agree with what he says, but I do think he's communicating, the urgency, and I'm impressed that he's communicating the collaborative nature of things. I don't think Canadians want politics between the premiers and the federal government when it comes to the pandemic and it comes to the vaccine rollout. Ford's colorful. People get it. They listen. I think he's still okay with it. He hasn't crossed the line there.
So from a political communications viewpoint, it's very effective, right?
Well, it's on brand for him.
Yeah, on brand. Yeah,
it's on brand for him. It's not. He's not pivoting between, uber sophisticated language and then pivoting to playground talk. He always kind of speaks that way. So
yeah, okay.
Fine.
What do you think, Kate? What do you think?
He does speak in a way that connects with people, and we're talking about his comments today, so I think clearly something's working there. There has been a shift, though, in how people view Doug Ford over the last number of months.
Yes.
And
it's wearing thin, according to Abacus. Great pollsters there at Abacus.
Might be a bit biased, but
probably a bit biased. But his positive numbers are dropping, right?
They are, and I'm not sure that folksiness is a replacement for action. And the notion that you can just call up a CEO of a pharmaceutical company and say, "Send me more vaccines, please," is naive at best. And I would say that yes. There's a time and a place for politics around this. A lot of his anger, in my view, is being misdirected at the company, which is frankly just trying to scale up and get the majority of vaccines out there as fast as they can, as opposed to the federal government that was responsible for actually negotiating these contracts in the first place. So it doesn't mean that you need to take the firecracker and point it at Justin Trudeau instead of the head of Pfizer, but at least talk about what you're going to do as the premier and the leader of the biggest province in Canada to try and move the needle. And I think, the colorful language or the high school language, as Susan says, is a bit of a mask to actually taking action on this. And I think a lot of people would like to see a little bit more action and some strong language from the premier directed in the right place, which is at the federal government, about what he's going to do to try and fix this problem.
I wonder if Joe Biden's taking calls. One more clip of Doug Ford here, okay?
There's a Pfizer plant, 6 hours in Kalamazoo, Michigan, with the Americans. My American friends, help us out. We need help once again, as we did with the PPE. You have a new president. No more excuses. We need your support. And we look forward to your support. And that's a direct message to President Biden. Help out your neighbor. You want us all to get along, hunky-dory, kumbaya? Help us out. I'm asking you for help.
Okay. I think Joe's a little occupied today, but we'll see.
Doug Ford knows well that Joe Biden and any president is probably going to vaccinate his own people before they send doses elsewhere.
Right.
And I think he would have that same expectation here in Canada. So again, the question shouldn't be, why isn't Joe Biden sending us any vaccines? It should be, well, why is the status of our contracts such that we're not getting them on time? And where was that domestic capacity that was promised back in November? Those should be the questions Doug Ford's asking, not begging the United States for help.
Well, I think Ford is good at deflection, as you pointed out, Kate. The reality is we don't have the domestic vaccine consumption at the moment, and the factory that's producing the vaccines is trying to get more of them out the door, and that's why there's a retooling that's happening. there is a bit of bluster to mask delays or perhaps logistical challenges. But I think Ford's right not to pick a fight with the Prime Minister. That is not what Canadians want him to be doing. The vaccines aren't coming through the door for a reason, for the short term. But I think what he has to be able to show very quickly is what he's going to do when they really start rolling in at significant volume and making sure they're not sitting in fridges, that they're getting into people's arms.
Okay, we'll be right back. We'll talk about the Conservative Party of Canada's Derek Sloan problem. Your Political Fix, Part 2, right after this on City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our second generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online, and the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again is, and fortunate, is that our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it, what we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it
returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Part 2 of the Political Fix. Susan Smith, Principal Blue Sky Strategy Group. Kate Harrison, Vice Chairman of Summa Strategies, with us as well. So we may have some news today out of the Conservative caucus about the future, or lack thereof, for Derek Sloan as a Conservative member of Parliament. What do you think about the options that are before Aaron O'Toole? Kate, he seems pretty adamant that he wants to see the back end of Mr. Sloan after this donation by a white nationalist. What do you think?
Feels like it's been a long time coming. I won't be upset to see Derek Sloan leave the Conservative Party caucus. In my view, there's been a number of instances where he has put himself before the party, and that leaves you exposed to maybe not being a member of the party anymore. And he said some pretty hateful things along the way that have been, kindly a distraction, worse, bigoted. Where I get a little concerned is in the possibility of the precedent that this particular ejection means. So he's being ejected because he accepted a donation from somebody's name he did not recognize, and the parties accepted that donation as well. I am concerned that the precedent now will be that every single member of parliament or candidate for election will be expected to scan through, let's say, social media for every potential donor to the party to see if they've said anything racist, bigoted, hateful, sexist, you name it.
Right.
And my concern is that the Conservatives might be the only one to actually enforce that policy when, I'm sure Susan would agree, there are probably unsavory donors to all of the major political parties in Canada. So I am a bit concerned that this is what is causing the ouster. What he said about Theresa Tam, far more questionable.
Yeah.
And grounds for a very difficult conversation. So I am a bit worried about the precedent being set with this particular choice.
Okay. What do you think, Susan?
I think Derek Sloan has been a leopard who has never changed his spots, and Aaron O'Toole's taken an awful long time to do something about it. He's been the leader for a while. He's defended Sloan in the past, and it's only when the taint of Trumpism and the kind of the far right side of things looks to be hampering Aaron O'Toole's opportunity to rebrand the party in the next election that he's chosen to do something about it. I mean, Derek Sloan's a guy that's touted conversion therapy for kids who are LGBTQ. I mean, as Kate pointed out, he's called into question Theresa Tam's loyalty to Canada. The guy is full of loaded statements and positions that represent a more extreme corner of Canadian society in some cases. And Aaron O'Toole's been a leader for a while, and he's finally showing some leadership. I think it may be a dangerous precedent, potentially, if more people have accepted Paul From's money before in the past. This guy's he's a terrible person, Fromm. The Conservatives did accept his leader, or they tossed him once. We had a leadership membership under Kelly Leach when she was running for leader, and they forced that to be torn up. They did accept his leadership his membership under Derek Sloan's campaign, and only recently have realized that this needed to be revoked as well. So O'Toole may have made a bet for himself.
Should have acted sooner. Should have acted sooner, right? Should have acted sooner.
So. Like, what was he waiting for? Derek Sloan is not who Aaron O'Toole purports to represent, or a part of the Canadian society that he wants to represent as terms of the voice of the Conservative Party. O'Toole's taken a while to kind of find the truth in this, and it may hurt him, but it's all in election prep.
But is the big question is Paul Fromm the only person that parties should not accept donations from? Again, I come back. My understanding is that it is not the practice of any political party in Canada to individually check donors' backgrounds before accepting donations to the party. Certainly, that's not the case for candidates seeking election.
Yeah.
Unless all
and
parties
is that in your
agree
impossible
to
task? Is that in your impossible task, right?
I would say yes. And not only that, but what does that say about just people who want to contribute to the system who say, oh my goodness, I've almost certainly said something in high school or college.
Yeah, but Kate, it's different than that. I think it's beyond individual comments with Fromm. Fromm's the head of, I don't know the names of the organizations, but they're pretty awful.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty easy for a party to have a top 10 list of people whose names should be red flags.
Right. Okay. Look, we only have a few minutes left, and it is a pretty big day in politics, and I know the pair of you will be glued to it, as we will be carrying it starting at 11 o'clock. The inauguration of Joe Biden. But before that, it's Mr. Trump's final goodbye.
I want to thank Congress because we really worked well with Congress, at least certain elements of Congress. But we really did. We've gotten so much done that nobody thought would be possible. But I do want to thank Congress, and I want to thank all of the great people of Washington, D.C., all of the people that we worked with to put this miracle together. So, have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Have a good life. If you say that with a certain tone, have a good life, it's kind of like an adolescent breakup in high school. Well, you have a good life. Okay, I want to ask you, as close watchers of all things political, how did that man change politics, generally speaking?
Very sadly for the worst.
For the worse. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's sown the seeds of doubt even more deeply and more widely in leaders in politics. He's sown the seeds of doubt in media, in people's trust of the media. Institutions.
Yeah, right?
It's been devastating, I think, and he's sown the seeds of division. He's created deep, deep divisions in American society that still, he gave permission for people's worst instincts to come forward. Social license takes on a new meaning with Trump. I will not miss the daily lies, lies, and more lies. I don't envy Biden and Harris the task they have to rebuild people's faith. They are not going to fix America in 4 years. They're going to give it a darn good shot and start to put it on the right path. But Donald Trump has started something very evil that is going to take a long time to fix.
Kate?
I'm not sure that the division started with Donald Trump. I think he certainly exposed it. I think that he, in some cases, exacerbated it. But at the same time, I think one of the biggest mistakes the left could make is to leave an inauguration today to think that America is healed just because Joe Biden is president. That election was a lot closer than anybody expected it would be. And I think that, it would be wrong to have the impression that America is in a state of kumbaya now just because Joe Biden is president. There are still big parts of society that are feeling very, very out of touch and neglected by Washington, and then Biden would be wise to reach out to those people early on in his presidency, or else we may end up in a position not too dissimilar from what we've had for the last 4 years from now.
Okay.
I think you're seeing that from the Biden administration. They put out what their priorities are going to be at the front end, and I think that they're very attuned to that division. They've just fought the election campaign. They've been on the ground, and they've seen the division, and we saw the mess at Capitol Hill that Donald Trump incited. And this is what I said. It's going to take more than 4 years to heal American society, but they have to start to rebuild people's trust in institutions and faith that the country will be there for them, and that they are included, everybody's included in America's vision and America's future.
Okay. Thanks to both of you for coming on today. Great pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Okay, bye-bye. Susan Smith from Blue Sky Strategy Group, Kate Harrison, Vice Chair, Summa Strategies. Talkback Hour 750-1310. Many topics to discuss with you here on City News.
1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smith Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 10 degrees. It's minus 9 in Smith Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Donald Trump says he thinks the new Biden administration will have great success in the next 4 years because he laid the foundation for it. In remarks at a farewell ceremony at Maryland's Joint Base Andrews, Trump told his supporters it has been an honor to serve.
The things that we've done have been just incredible, and I couldn't have done it without you. So just a goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form.
Trump did not mention President-elect Biden by name during his remarks. Now, as the Trump plane lifted off for Florida, loudspeakers on the tarmac played the final notes of the song My Way. The swearing-in ceremony for Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will be broadcast live on City News starting just after 11 o'clock this morning. Now, Joe Biden started his inauguration day by going to Mass at Washington's Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle. He and his wife Jill, accompanied by the incoming Vice President Kamala Harris and her husband, as well as top Democratic and Republican congressional leaders. Now, Biden is going to be America's second Catholic president. St. Matthew's was the scene of the funeral of the first, John F. Kennedy. City News Time, 10:03. Now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Sun, cloud, and a few flurries for us today. Our high minus 9, minus 15 for the low. We get into the snow overnight. A system moving through could bring 5 to about 10 centimeters of snow overnight and for Thursday. For today, the high minus 9.
And right now in Ottawa, it's minus 10. In Smith Falls, it's minus 9 degrees. The police watchdog in the province investigating the death of a man who lost vital signs while in custody at the Ottawa Police Station. Special Investigations Unit says an autopsy is scheduled for today on the 49-year-old. He died last night. It says the Ottawa Police Service arrested a man on a drug warrant late in the afternoon yesterday and was taken to the police station, placed in a cell. But he was found unresponsive mid-evening. Emergency medical services found him without vital signs. The agency says the man died in hospital soon after. An Ottawa man who recently traveled internationally now facing charges under the Quarantine Act, according to police. The man traveled to Rwanda, returning to Ottawa January 12th. Under the act, he was required to stay in isolation until January 26th in a quarantine-designated facility. When officers visited the suspect to investigate a complaint, they say he was found just hanging out with 2 other people. Madrid's emergency services in Spain says rescue teams, firefighters, and police all worked in a central area of the capital following an explosion. Witnesses describe it as extremely loud. Video and images from Madrid shared on social media show a tower of smoke coming from a building and rubble scattered in a central street of the Spanish capital. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Live coverage of the inauguration begins in an hour from now here on City News. Before then, we have Canadian business to take care of. I want to focus on an Ontario issue. First of all, find out where you are on it. Our phone lines are open right now, 750-1310. This is your hour, your opinions, your phone calls. Okay, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. The Rob Snow Show at ottawa.citynews.ca is the email address as well. Feel free to drop me an email. I want to know where you come down on this whole idea of paid sick days for workers in Ontario who don't have paid sick days right now. For workers in Ontario who don't have paid sick days. The Ford government is taking a lot of heat for not having some kind of regimen for paid sick days in Ontario for workers that don't have them, as some kind of agreement or benefits plan with their employer. Now, there is a federal program, right? Canada Sickness Recovery Benefit, and this is what Premier Ford often points to as a reason for not moving on this. And under the Canada Sickness Recovery Benefit, there are 2 weeks' worth of paid sick days available. You can apply for it 2 times to get the full 2 weeks. Like you apply for it once, you would get 1 week, and then if you need to apply for it again, you can apply for it again and get another week. And it's a total of 2 weeks, and it's $450 a week after tax, right? It's not a lot of money, $450 a week. And it is apparently a bureaucratic nightmare right now to even try and get this money. A long wait to even get the money into your bank account. So I'm not saying that the idea is without merit, but I want to know where you come down on it, okay? Because it's a long-standing issue. It predates COVID-19. But we are where we are. The new numbers for cases are going to be out in just a few minutes for Ontario, the number of cases of COVID-19 for today. And the last thing that Canada needs right now is people going to work sick with COVID-19. I mean, for anything, or anything else for that matter. But especially COVID-19, because they're afraid of losing a paycheck. Okay, I get that. Or they're afraid of losing a day's pay. I understand that. But there's also the very real circumstance and reality that most businesses find themselves in right now. The kind of businesses you would think that typically wouldn't offer paid sick days, right? Smaller, independent businesses, the businesses of Main Street. Are they really in a position right now, of all times, to be offering a new benefit? Can they really afford to pay people not to work? And for a great many of those businesses, I believe the answer would be no. I cannot afford to do that, not now. That would be a nice to do, but I can't do it right now. So what's the government supposed to do here? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Should Doug Ford bring in a paid sick day program for workers who don't have paid sick days already? And force employers to offer paid sick days. As I say, it's an issue that predates COVID-19. But what's a line that we've been hearing again and again and again since this all started back in March? You don't let a good crisis go to waste. And look, if you're, say, a union organizer, a labor leader, a left-wing politician, an opposition politician, and something has been lost and you see an opportunity now to get it back, why not jump on the opportunity to try and get it back? And so it is with paid sick days. The previous Liberal government, the Wynne government, in its dying days, in a desperate bid to troll for NDP votes, any NDP votes it could find, brought in a system whereby a worker could take 10 days off a year. It was called personal emergency leave. And 2 of them would be paid by the employer. Okay, it was the business that covered the cost. It wasn't the government. It was the business. And the business community was not happy. Lobbied the Ford government saying, look, this move here from this tone-deaf Wynne government is only going to cost jobs and it's going to raise prices. And it was all part of a major package of labor reforms, including $15 an hour minimum wages and everything. And then the PCs won the election in a landslide, and they repealed all of it and replaced it with its own legislation, and it also froze the minimum wage of $14 an hour. And the Ford government did away with 2 paid sick days for Ontario workers. They were replaced with 3 days off for personal illness, 2 days off for bereavement, 3 for quote-unquote family responsibilities, but all of those days are unpaid days off. Unpaid, okay? And, of course, the left-wingers went wild, the unions went wild. But again, this was long before COVID, so that's why this debate is back now. But you don't want someone going to work with COVID because they can't afford to lose even a day's pay, do you? Really? You can see that side of it, can you not? That's why this issue is back and it's bigger than ever before. Doug Ford says, hey, there's a federal program. I don't need to be doubling up on federal programs. If you need paid time off and you don't have it, go and apply to the federal government for some help. Do we have some audio of this? Here's Premier Ford here.
If the system's not working, and that's what I'm hearing from the media, we're having conversations as we speak and over the last little while with the federal government, maybe to change it. If people don't feel they're getting it quick enough, which I've brought to the attention of the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, then we need to change the program.
Need to change the program. So, meaning Mr. Trudeau needs to change the program. The Liberals in Ontario, the New Democrats in Ontario, Organized Labour in Ontario, they all are singing from the same hymn book. It's not good enough, Doug. It's not good enough. They want the employer to offer paid sick days. So workers don't go to work if they're sick. Don't make other people sick. Don't miss a day's pay. And I want to know what you think about it. What do you think about it? Do you think our businesses can afford to do this, to offer this right now? Should an employer that doesn't already offer paid sick days to its workers be forced through government legislation, be forced to offer paid sick days to its employees? What do you think? Where do you come down on it? Wouldn't be the government offering the paid sick days. It would be the businesses doing the paid sick days. It would be the part of the cost of doing business. Even if a business is even allowed to be open right now. What do you, 750-1310, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310, Talk Back Hour. Lines available here on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
You're too sick to work and you're...
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to like the environment or to our bodies. We have like fun stuff, so like really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just like right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, like in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website because that was only, I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of like full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business at the same time, still get myself on the map because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, like online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Again, coverage of the inauguration of Joe Biden begins in the final hour of our program here, the Rob Snow Show, and we'll carry on probably well after the noon hour. We're expecting Joe Biden, Kamala Harris to be sworn in around noon, according to the latest reports out of Washington. Our start time is, to put it precisely, 11:06 a.m. this morning. Our coverage will begin. Before that, we're covering off some issues north of the border on the home front, asking you about this. A lot of controversy right now, a lot of great debate happening on the future of paid sick days in Ontario with the Ford government under pressure to bring in some kind of paid sick day regime. And I'm asking, should an employer, because this is how the left envisions it in Ontario, it would be the employer, not the government doing it. Should a business that doesn't already offer paid sick days to its workers be forced through government legislation to offer paid sick days to employees? That used to be the case in Ontario for a very brief period of time. It was 2 paid sick days under changes brought in by the Wynne government. But let's get into it. I'm glad we have some calls this morning. Chris, Ottawa. Good morning, Chris. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Short answer is no, we cannot afford to pay sick leave. I run a small business restaurant.
Okay.
We already lost 20% of our staff when we had to increase the minimum wage, which we couldn't afford to pay. So that took a hit already that we had to, lower the service level, if you will.
Right.
And margins are so low in the restaurant business, it's impossible to have any more money to give to anybody, frankly. And right now, we as a business owner cover when a staff member is sick, so we have to, do the job, if you will. Mm-hmm. But to actually then have to fork over, more money, there just isn't any of that money left, let alone before COVID. Now it's even worse.
Okay. So, again, even let's say nobody had ever heard of COVID and the pandemic never happened. Would you be more open to it under that environment, or would you still be a no on that?
We'd still be in the hole because
you'd still be in the hole. Okay.
Yeah, restaurants don't make money. Bars make money, but restaurants do not.
Okay. Why are you in the restaurant business, Chris?
Yeah, that's a good question sometimes. But there just isn't. And when the minimum wage went up, between paying minimum wage hikes,
right,
WSIB for insurance for your employees.
That's right, yeah.
The matching that you have to do for CPP and UI, that all comes out of the business.
Yeah, had higher hydro bills at the time as well.
Higher hydro bills, et cetera, in a low margin business. There just isn't any money left over for that. In fact, we were surprised when we had to pay for stat holidays. So even if we're not open on a stat holiday, you still have to pay your staff for that stat holiday at a certain prorated percentage.
Right.
That all comes out of the final wallet of the owners that just frankly doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. All the best, sir. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for calling. Again, Doug Ford says, look, there's a Canada Sickness Recovery benefit. It's there. You can apply for it. I know it takes a while. That's government red tape at the federal level, and maybe the federal government should improve its delivery of that program.
If the system's not working, and that's what I'm hearing from the media, we're having conversations as we speak and over the last little while with the federal government, maybe to change it. If people don't feel they're getting it quick enough, which I've brought to the attention of the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, then we need to change the program.
Should an employer that doesn't already offer paid sick days to its workers be forced by government legislation from the Ontario government to offer paid sick days to its employees? Used to have 2 paid sick days. Now there are none. Connor. Good morning, Connor. You're on City News.
Good morning. My sister-in-law works in a factory in Mississauga for maybe a little over minimum wage.
Okay.
So I see that side of the equation where she can't afford to not go to work. And so if she had symptoms, it would be a very difficult choice, right? Like the financial duress that she could be putting herself in even by missing 2 or 3 days of work.
Right.
So I do see that side. But on the other hand, I don't think it's the role of private enterprise to be charitable in that way. They can be if they want to be, but they shouldn't have to be. I'm fortunate enough that I work for a massive company. I won't name it. So there's more leeway. There's a lot more profit for them to take care of their employees in that way. But like your last caller, who's probably business is already failing or close to failing and losing money, you can't expect that kind of a private business who exists to make a profit to sacrifice it like that. It's the role of government, if the government chooses to legislate, to help citizens out that way, not of a private business.
Okay. Thank you, Connor. Thank you. There's Connor's opinion. 750-1310, 750-1310. If there's this little interest in this topic, we'll move along. We'll do other things. But James, downtown. Go ahead, James.
Morning.
Yes.
I looked at Peggy Sadler's bill, the NDP proposal for Ontario, and they are demanding 7 paid days of leave for employers.
Right.
And an additional 14 days of paid leave during any infectious disease emergency.
Wow.
So they want, that's Peggy Sadler's bill, the NDP.
3 weeks.
They're demanding 3 weeks plus 3 more days of unpaid. So they're demanding 3 weeks of unpaid leave. I'm sorry, of paid leave.
Yeah.
I mean, that's clearly not viable for huge numbers of small employers. So if I were Ford, I would just say, you guys need to go back to Jagmeet Singh and tell him he negotiated a bad deal. You know, they were
with
all
Mr.
praising
Trudeau.
Jagmeet Trudeau.
Yeah.
So he needs to go back and say, listen, Ms. Horvath, why don't you go talk to Jagmeet and get him to negotiate a better deal? Because clearly you were praising the deal that he made earlier on. Now you actually don't think you like it. Also, it's clearly not affordable, because if you actually look at the NDP government in BC, Premier Horgan, they don't have any paid leave as well. So he could just go back and say to Horwath, I'm going to do exactly what Premier Horgan is doing. Horgan is doing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a lot easier when you're not in power to demand all these things like 21 days of paid
leave. Yeah.
But when you're a premier or you're, if you're when you're and the NDP premier of a province, I think they, you know, it's much tougher to govern than it is to be an opposition person demanding these sort of things.
Okay, thank you, James. Thank you. Good call as always. 750-1310, 750-1310. 613-750-1310. So the Bank of Canada did nothing with interest rates today. The overnight rate remains at 0.25%. That broke in the last little while. There had been some speculation there'd be a micro cut in the interest rate to try and put some downward pressure on the Canadian dollar, which is getting a little hot. We had the chief economist on from the Bank of Montreal yesterday, Doug Porter, who has the dollar at 80 cents U.S. by the end of this year. They're still going to buy $4 billion worth of bonds every week, which is kind of it's extraordinary, right, that the Bank of Canada is still doing that. It's QE bond buying program, $4 billion a week. It has cut its growth forecast for the Canadian economy for this year and then raised it for next year, the 2022 growth estimate for the Canadian economy. Now, as for COVID-19 cases for today, the latest numbers are in. They're higher than yesterday, but you remember they warned us that yesterday's numbers were probably underreported because of some problems out of the public health agency in Toronto, the local public health agency, Toronto Public Health. So today's number for Ontario, it is encouraging to see this number below 3,000. Okay, it's 2,655 Ontario-wide. The number for Ottawa is 86, and I don't see any other numbers here. So, but it is encouraging to see it. 54,000 tests completed. So That's on the high side. 54,000 tests. How many in Toronto today, David? Do you have a number? How many cases in Toronto, Peel, some of the hot zones?
In Toronto, 925.
Oh, still pretty hot.
473 in Peel.
Okay.
226 in York Region, 179 in Windsor, Essex County, and 129 in Niagara.
Okay, so at least it's below 3,000, the number province-wide, and it's well below 3,000, and for Ottawa, back under 100. So these are, encouraging developments, and a little bit more breaking news. Just before our 10:30 newscast, Joe Biden, again, our coverage begins at 11 o'clock of the inauguration. One of his first orders of business by way of executive order is going to be to cancel all the permits associated with the Keystone XL pipeline project. So in advance of that, TC Energy, which used to be called when all of this began with Keystone XL, TransCanada Corporation, Canadian company, out of Calgary, TC Energy has announced that it is suspending all work on that project anyway, in anticipation that it's going to be canceled by President-elect Joe Biden. The decision, quote, this is from the company, TransCanada, the decision would overturn an unprecedented comprehensive regulatory process that lasted more than a decade and repeatedly concluded the pipeline would transport much-needed energy in an environmentally responsible way while enhancing North American energy security. The action would directly lead to the layoff of thousands of unionized workers and negatively impact groundbreaking industry commitments to use renewable energy, as well as historic equity partnerships with Indigenous communities. That from TC Energy in advance of the installation of Joe Biden as the next American president, which is likely to happen in about 90 minutes from now. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 11. It feels like minus 20. In Smiths Falls, minus 10. It feels like minus 17. And here's what's making news this hour. City News will take you live to the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States. It starts in just over 1.5 hours' time. Joe Biden will be sworn in, ending 4 years of Republican control of the White House under Donald Trump. He jetted off this morning for Florida. Trump's last word at a tarmac address: "We'll be back in some form." Among the first orders of business for the new president apparently will be to scrap the Keystone XL pipeline. As a result, this morning, TC Energy says it has now suspended work on that project. New numbers from the province today on new COVID-19 cases, 2,655 of them, and the Ministry of Health says 86 of them are in Ottawa. Over 54,300 tests were completed for the numbers. Now, other big hotspots in the province, 925 of the new cases are in Toronto, 473 in Peel, 226 in York Region. In our area, Eastern Ontario is reporting 16 new cases. There are 2 in Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark, and no new cases this morning in Renfrew. Bank of Canada keeping its key interest rate target on hold at 0.25%. The central bank says it does expect the Canadian economy to contract in the first quarter of 2021. And an update on that Madrid explosion we told you about a half an hour ago. It was a gas leak explosion in the Spanish capital. Apparently, at least 2 people have been killed. City News Time at 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Big fat zero. Big fat zero. That's the number of vaccines we'll get from Pfizer next week. Not cut in half, cut to zero. The big fat zero. And the Prime Minister pulled a fast one yesterday, didn't he? He gathered the media there, either in person or by telephone, at the familiar surroundings of Rideau Cottage. This is what passes for Parliament. Rideau Cottage, 11:15, even started on time, something important to say, and then he left out the most important news. Didn't mention it at all. The part of the story that turned out to be, what? The top story for the rest of the day. Really, that Canada will get, let's count them. Zero. 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 What's less than zero? Shipments of the Pfizer vaccine next week. Not a one. None at all. And yet the Prime Minister, think about this, folks. 750-1310. By the way, welcome to the second half of the Talkback Hour. I know you're all watching CNN. The Prime Minister, there he is. He's addressing the nation. Cable television, coast to coast. And he couldn't even muster the courage to tell Canadians, I'm sorry, there will be no Pfizer doses next week. Just for shame, I say. For shame, for shame. Instead, you know what he did? He left that little piece of dirty laundry. He left that for Major General Fortin to reveal later in the day. I guess the Prime Minister didn't want the headlines to read, Trudeau says, right? And in fact, when you see some of the headlines this morning, it doesn't say, Trudeau says Canada will get no Pfizer vaccine. It says, Canada or government says, or General Fortin revealed. It doesn't say Trudeau says Canada will get no Pfizer vaccine next week. So from a political communications point of view, you could say mission accomplished, right? Because while the story is certainly big, all of the headlines don't say Trudeau says. Instead, they, for the most part, they say Canada won't receive Pfizer vaccine. It's sneaky. You know, it's kind of sneaky. It really is. You could call it a lie by omission. But they're really digging themselves a hole, these Trudeau Liberals, with their handling of the vaccine rollout so far. First, you have the Prime Minister failing, on purpose and by design, failing to be honest with Canadians during a nationally televised news conference about the biggest news of the day. No Pfizer doses for Canada for an entire week. Okay, pretty big news. Some would say, bombshell, breaking news, all of that stuff. That's one thing, and it's a pretty big thing. But then Anita Anand, oh my gosh, it's so tempting to play the clip. I can't play the clip because it's a CBC clip, and then CBC would come after me and whatever. I'm not allowed to play it. But if you saw it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen it, it's all over social media, and you can go watch it for yourself and judge for yourself. But Anita Anand appeared on the afternoon political talk show that they have on CBC News Channel. And I'm telling you, she was spinning so fast, she was making the audience dizzy. And that started lighting up Canadian political Twitter. And she revealed that Mr. Trudeau hasn't even called the CEO of Pfizer, hasn't even made a phone call. You have Mr. Trudeau, he's leader of the country. Number one on Maclean's magazine, most powerful people in the country list. Soon to ask for your vote in a re-election campaign. Going to drag us all to the polls while the pandemic rages on. And we learn through the procurement minister that the prime minister hasn't even picked up the phone to call the CEO of Pfizer. The CEO of Pfizer is on CNBC every second day. They can get him on CNBC, but the prime minister can't call him? And at least make an attempt, beg, plead, please, can you give us some of the doses that we ordered? Please. What about Kalamazoo, Michigan? You have a plant in Kalamazoo. Are they making? No, not even a phone call. Benjamin Netanyahu has called the guy 17 times. Prime Minister Trudeau has time to host a 30-minute news conference outside Rideau Cottage with the news media, where he leaves out the most important piece of news information, no doses next week. Something every Canadian would be interested in knowing, but he doesn't have 30 minutes to spare to telephone the CEO of Pfizer. Try and find out what the heck is going on. That came out of the Anita Anand interview yesterday on political. What is the name of that show?
Power and Politics.
Power and Politics.
CBC,
yes. Didn't even make the phone call. Instead, what have we been treated to from those two? Spin, duck, weave, dodge, deflect. No doses for an entire week. You see, that is crucial information because of the ripple effect that it has all across the country. Okay, it ripples from every provincial capital to local city hall to public health board to the hospital administration to every long-term care home, retirement community, retirement home. And the words don't even cross his lips, the prime minister. Instead, what does he do? He hangs the general out to dry. Well, we'll let him break the bad news. And you see it played out in this morning's news coverage. This is in this morning's Vancouver Sun. No Moderna or Pfizer vaccine deliveries for BC in the last week of January. No Moderna or Pfizer deliveries in BC in the last week of January, reports this morning's Vancouver Sun. In total, British Columbia will receive 60,000 fewer doses of Pfizer vaccine over the next month than had been earlier promised. Calgary Herald, where now they get to deal with this cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline. It's a great day to be in Calgary. Headline: Another setback. Alberta postpones first dose amid vaccine shortage. First dose, let alone the second dose. Some people who need the first dose haven't even received the first dose. I came across this one in the Regina Leader Post this morning. Can you believe this? Care home vaccine lottery, a sign of chaos. Things are so bad. Residents in some long-term care homes, you know what they do about the vaccine? This is how they decide who gets the vaccine. They put the residents' names in a hat, and if they pull out your name out of the hat, you get to have a shot. Okay, that is in the founding province of Medicare. What would Tommy Douglas is spitting in his grave if he's reading the Leader Post this morning? I'm trying to picture that. How do they? People are in the lunchroom, and the winner of the next vaccine is Edna McDonald. Come on down. We got a shot of Pfizer for you, Edna.
I picture like a big ball, like a power ball, and they're all spinning around in there.
That's what the bingo guy does now, right? Winnipeg Free Press. You just go all across the country, right? Winnipeg Free Press. Vaccine bookings might stop again, province says. Montreal Gazette. Quebec revises COVID-19 vaccine schedule. Halifax Chronicle Herald. Pfizer shutdown to slow Nova Scotia's vaccine rollout. And then, of course, in Ontario, you had Doug Ford doing the Daily Doug, the 1 o'clock news conference with the zinger and the humdinger about yings and yangs, right? Firecrackers.
Than getting these vaccines. And if I was in his shoes, I'm sure he is doing it, but I'd be on that phone call every single day. I'd be up that guy's yin yang so far with a firecracker, he wouldn't know what hit him from Pfizer.
So it's all very frustrating. It would just be nice if the Prime Minister, look, if you're going to speak to Canadians and do these silly Rideau Cottage news conferences, be honest with people. Yeah. I know it's not what you want to hear right now, but we're not getting any doses next week. I have called the CEO of Pfizer to try and find out what's going on. Wouldn't you like to hear something like that just for once? But he can't bring himself to do that because it's a lie by omission, which is still a lie. Steve, thank you for calling. Steve, good morning. You're on City News.
Hi, Rob. Steve Conn. I'm wondering why we're so surprised that we're not getting the supply of the vaccine. I mean, Pfizer told Canada that if they did not follow the parameters that they tested the vaccine on, they would cut Canada off. And now they've done it. And we seem surprised over this.
What parameters are we not following?
The maximum of 42 days. If you went over the 42 days, they could not guarantee the vaccine. And they said if we were going to do that, they would cut us off. And Quebec wouldn't do it, and General Hillier was also looking at the fact to give one shot and then much later give the second shot. So Pfizer didn't like that, and they said, we will cut you off or cut down your supply if you go that route.
So you think it's about the protocols? You think it's
I do.
That were in place by Pfizer?
Pfizer told Canada that. It was 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Okay, I'd have to look into that. Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. A very interesting point. I'm going to look into that. Eric, good morning, Eric. Thank you for calling. You're on City News.
Morning, Rob.
Hi.
I think we have to remember that how late Canada was in ordering vaccines of any stripe. The earliest date was August 5th. With Moderna, Pfizer. The latest was AstraZeneca, September 25th. So we're a way
just placing the order. Just placing the order.
That's the order placing.
Okay.
That's not the contract discussions. Anything that resolves in a finalized purchase agreement.
And how does that compare to other countries?
Well, they started in May.
Okay.
Right. May. I mean, the UK, the US. The U.S. has put billions of dollars into the Kalamazoo plant in Michigan. and has stepped up and said, I want X number of hundreds of millions of doses. Good on them. They're going to get it. But one thing a couple things I'd like to raise. Doug Ford mentioning on the news yesterday a call to his call to Joe Biden for some sort of vaccine reciprocity.
Can we have 1 million doses?
Yeah, well, not can we have 1 million doses. Can you give us 1 million doses now that we can pay you back when you can use them? Because Pfizer was manufacturing and stockpiling long before it got FDA approval. So it's got probably hundreds of millions of doses sitting in a freezer somewhere that's being doled out. Doses that they're not going to be able to use probably for another month or two. So I think good on Ford for reaching out, for thinking outside the box and saying, listen, I know you've got them there. I know you're not going to be able to use them in the next couple of months. We could really use 1 million right now, and we've got 1 million coming. So a little bit of reciprocity here. Give it to us now. We'll give you yours when you need them.
Okay.
And the other thing he should be looking at is if it doesn't work with Biden, reach out directly to Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. There's a pipeline there.
Yep.
We're nearest neighbors. I think there's probably a solution space in there, even though the Kalamazoo plant is dedicated to U.S. population. Some sort of reciprocity, I think, is probably in the mix.
Okay. Thank you, Eric.
Okay.
Thank you for your call. We'll be right back. Final quarter. Talk back hour. Talking vaccines now on the Rob Snow Show here on City News.
The location is unique. There's, as you can see, it's open, and we have large windows. You can sit down and you can look outside. And this scene is not many scenes like that in Ottawa anymore with the high buildings. And we have the train station to the west of us. We have the train yards. To the south, we have Saint Laurent Shopping Center, not far from here. And OC Transpo, not far from here. And the train, the light train, again, is not far from here. You can find breakfast. The breakfast, it was 7 or 8 years ago, it was one of the best five restaurants in Ottawa, one of the five best breakfasts in Ottawa. 7 or 8 years ago, it was in the Citizen. And our club sandwich is voted by customers the best in town. And the pea soup, too, is voted the best in town. We sell, we make pizza, we make Italian food, Lebanese dishes. Many customers describe it as it has the prices of the 60s, very reasonable prices. And the food, many say the best in town, not me. Many customers say that. It was a shock. It was a shock. And we went from doing well to barely doing very little. We relied heavily on the takeout, and the takeout was not that much. There was some. I hear from many customers that they are willing to come and sit inside. They're not afraid of the spread, as long as we wash our hands, sanitize everything, and wear your mask and keep the distancing. Most or all our customers are okay with that. So they are against the lockdown, They are supporting us a lot. And if it wasn't for the community loyalty, we wouldn't be here today. So I have to thank them for their support so far. It's been great.
Vaccine shortage, you see it in the data and how we compare to other countries, our peer countries. We're nowhere near the gold standard. Okay, we're doing better than some other countries, but we're no way are we number one with a bullet. You know, despite the Prime Minister going on and on and on, oh, we've procured all of this vaccine. As this drags on, look, day after day, week after week, month after month, people are going to go nuts, okay? They're going to grow very tired of hearing about how much vaccine has been procured. They'll want to know how much vaccine has actually been delivered. It's like, pizza. You can procure the pizza. It's like the only thing after you procure the pizza, you want to know when the pizza is going to be delivered, right? 30 minutes or it's free. Did they still do that, the pizza, David? 30 minutes or it's free?
It's 45 minutes now.
Is it still free, though, after 45 minutes? It is.
But they give themselves a lot more. It's 45
after you procure it,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
You expect it to actually be delivered.
I would expect it to, yeah.
Yeah. You wouldn't want the pizza guy to call and say, actually, we have 0 pizzas. I know you procured enough pizza to feed you 5 times over, but we can't deliver you any pizza. We're out of pizza, actually. We're retooling the pizza.
I'm hungry now.
To hear that we're getting no Pfizer vaccine, it hastens the impatience. So you look at our world in data, which uses the benchmark doses administered per 100 people. Right? In Canada, the number is 1.62 when I looked it up at 4 o'clock this morning. 1.62. In the United States, 3.71. In the UK, 6.96. In the UAE, 20.88. And in Israel, it's now up to 31.15. Spain, 2.07. We used to be doing better than Spain. Now we're not. Italy is ahead of us. France, not so well, 0.74. Not sure what's going on there. As of January 18th, the United States had administered the most doses in just raw numbers of any country in the world, 4.5 million. Then it was Israel, 2.4 million, Canada, 613,000. And now it sounds as though, at least with Pfizer, it's coming to a grinding halt on deliveries. The Prime Minister, when given the chance, he won't even tell you about it. He leaves that to his underlings. Andy, Ottawa, thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, sir. Thank you for calling.
Well, there's a lot of things to talk about, but to start off with vaccines, to hear like a country like Israel has 30% vaccination is really like, that's embarrassing. You got to feel bad.
It's impressive for Israel, though. It's impressive for Israel.
Oh, it's super impressive for Israel, but it gives us a gauge. This is a good wake-up call for Canadians, because a lot of Canadians seem to think that we have the best health care. Like what happened to Canada being, the number one in pharmaceuticals, and we can't even make a vaccine, for God's sakes. And we're in the G8. So this is a big wake-up call for Canadians.
Yes, it is. Yes. We could have made a vaccine here. We make flu vaccine here every year, sir.
Okay, right. but under a stress situation, our system is not prepared for it. 0 at all, And another thing, too, is like one big problem that we have that's creating all these problems is something that we don't really talk about that much. Is we have systematic bureaucracy, and it is choking our government. It's choking our businesses, and it's leaving us in the rearview mirror on a global level. We are way behind. Even our infrastructure. Like, look at our infrastructure. We can't even build our own 5G network. We got to go to China. Just imagine that for a second here.
Well, I wouldn't say we have to go to China, because when it comes to the major telecom companies now, they're not for 5G, they're not using Chinese equipment.
Sure.
You know, Bell, TELUS, Rogers, they've all announced they're not using the Huawei gear anymore. So
okay, but why can't Canada do something like that? Like, we don't even have cell phone reception in Barhaven, Rob.
Oh, okay. Well,
we don't have cell phone reception in Barhaven.
Well, that's something else. That's something else altogether. Okay.
It's 2020.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
come on. What do you mean? Come on. What do you mean you don't have cell phone reception in Barhaven, Andy? Come on.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Oh, really?
It's ridiculous. Like,
really?
It's really ridiculous.
Like, if you're driving around Barhaven, how many bars do you get on your phone?
I've got a lot of drop calls in Barhaven, I'll tell you, and there's a lot of people that agree with me. You know, we're getting ripped off on.
Okay, all right. I don't want to get off into cell phone coverage in Barhaven, but I understand what you're saying. We need to be more robust on when it comes to many items to do with domestic production. I understand what you're saying. Is cell phone reception really that bad in Barhaven? I mean, could I get a whole show out of that maybe someday?
I haven't been to Barhaven in so long.
No. Okay. Irene in Carleton Place. Good morning, Irene.
Hi. Rob, what I'd like to talk about is, like, with this federal Liberal government, they sure do know how to create a lot of drama.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
so
they do.
It's the drama teacher. But I don't understand. Okay, like 410, he announced, I think it was over a week ago, that eventually they'll be getting 1 million vaccines a week, right? And then a couple of days later, we find out there's a shutdown over there in Belgium and retooling.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And what I don't understand, like, if you have a company and you're providing a product, you just don't say in 2 or 3 days, oh, well, we're shutting everything down.
Right.
Because you have to plan, you have to organize, you have to let your vendors know.
Right.
So how can, like, on Monday or Tuesday, the guy says, oh, we're going to have 1 million a week.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the week, we're not getting any.
Well, yeah, again, I come back to my whole pizza thing. Okay. I call pizza takes my order and they take my money. At what? And then they tell me a half an hour later, oh, wait, actually, my oven's down for retooling.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then there's the other thing, too. On Global News on Sunday night, National, I was watching it, and they said, by the end of June, we should have 8.5 million people vaccinated. Well, when are the other 30 million getting vaccinated? Between June and September? Even if we had 1 million vaccines a week between June and September, it's only 12 weeks. That's only 12 million.
Right now, at the current pace, best case scenario, we will vaccinate, best case scenario, 13 million people in a year. We are on pace right now. We are on pace right now to vaccinate everyone. Now, young people may not need to get the vaccine. Under 15 years old may not need to get the vaccine. But right now, if we wanted to vaccinate everyone, all 38 million Canadians, would take 2.9 years.
And the other thing, too, you know.
Okay, we got to go. We have to go. We have to go because the inauguration ceremony is coming up. We're going to carry that live. Thank you, Irene. I do appreciate your call. We do have to stop here. The news is coming up, and then shortly after 11 o'clock, we will join live anchored coverage courtesy of ABC News Radio. And Aaron Katersky will anchor our coverage of the inauguration of Joe Biden. This is City News.
It's Wednesday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 11, minus 17, and minus 10 in Smiths Falls, but feeling like minus 17. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Donald Trump spoke to supporters at Joint Base Andrews before leaving Washington for the final time this morning as U.S. president.
In his final remarks before leaving Washington, President Trump did not explicitly acknowledge Joe Biden, who will be sworn in today as the next president. But he did have this message for the new administration.
I wish the new administration great luck and great success.
President Trump appeared to preemptively take credit for any success the Biden administration achieves in office.
They have the foundation to do something really spectacular. And again, we put it in a position like it's never been before, despite the worst plague.
Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
Now, this paves the way for President-elect Joe Biden to be sworn in. That ceremony starting in mere minutes. We will go live to the ceremony as soon as it begins. Special coverage from our wire service, Canadian Press, and anchored by ABC. Now, the National Mall in Washington is virtually empty. Eva Pilgrim is there and says the ceremony is going to unfold at the U.S. Capitol, battered by insurrectionist siege just a couple of weeks ago and devoid of crowds because of the COVID-19 threat.
We're actually standing here along the National Mall, and this is where the people, the general public, would normally come to watch the inauguration. Instead of there being a sea of people behind me, there's a sea of flags, and there are flags, about 200,000 flags in the grounds out here representing the people who couldn't come and attend this event. There are flags from all 50 states and the U.S. territories.
Now, Trump left the White House for the final time this morning, as mentioned, saying, quote, "It's been a great honor, the honor of a lifetime." City News Time, 11:03, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Sun, cloud, and a few flurries for us today. Our high -9, -15 for the low. We get into the snow overnight. A system moving through could bring 5 to about 10 centimeters of snow overnight and for Thursday. For today, the high -9.
And right now in Ottawa, -11. In Smiths Falls, it's -10 degrees. There are 2,655 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario today, along with 89 more deaths. Ministry of Health says 86 of the new cases are in Ottawa, 16 new cases in Eastern Ontario's health unit, 2 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. There are no new cases today in Renfrew County. There are 925, though, new cases in Toronto, which had a mix-up in their numbers yesterday. 473 in Peel, 226 in York Region. Over 54,300 tests were completed for these numbers. Residents and staff at Stonebridge Manor in Carleton Place have received their first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit says 77 people were inoculated last Sunday. It was part of the area's first mobile vaccination clinic. The health unit says more mobile clinics are being dispatched in the coming days and weeks to other high-risk long-term care and retirement homes. City News Time, 11:05. Special Investigations Unit investigating the death of a 49-year-old man. It happened last night in the city. Provincial Police Watchdog says shortly before 5 in the afternoon, Ottawa police executed a drug warrant at a home on Carling Avenue. A man arrested and taken to the police station, placed in a cell. The SLU says around 9:30, the man was found unresponsive and taken to hospital with vital signs absent. The 49-year-old was pronounced dead in hospital about a half an hour later. An autopsy is scheduled to take place today. And the Bank of Canada keeping its key interest rate on target, holding at 0.25%, predicting the economy is going to shrink over the first quarter of this year. A 24-year-old Ottawa man is facing charges under the Quarantine Act. According to police, the man traveled to Rwanda, returning to the capital on January 12th. Now, he was required to stay in isolation until January 26 under the Act, in a quarantine-designated facility on King Edward Avenue. Investigating a complaint, officers found the suspect hanging out with a couple of other people. He's been charged with failing to comply with the Quarantine Act. The 2 visitors given verbal warnings. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca. Now, live to our special coverage of the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States.
Time for us, for we the people, to come together. Our democracy pushed, tested, threatened, proved to be resilient, true and strong as a nation. certainly been shaken to our depths this year. Now it's time to awaken, get moving, time for hope. This is not a partisan moment. This must be an American moment.
Live from the Capitol, here is ABC News correspondent Aaron Katursky.
Good morning. Joe Biden is about to assume the presidency on this cold, partly cloudy day here in a fortified Washington. He will utter the traditional oath of office during this most untraditional Inauguration Day, coming 2 weeks after a riot and amid a raging pandemic. Chairs for the limited audience here are spaced apart. There's no crowd on the National Mall, which is encircled by armed troops. The normal exuberance around the inauguration is subdued by melancholy over loss, division, violence. And yet the flags here drape the facade. The Marine Band is playing its patriotic themes. 3 former presidents are mingling in the crowd here. The ceremony looks almost normal. And for a second, you can almost forget the violent insurrection just 2 weeks ago and the cascading crises now facing the new president. And you can admire this enduring right of American democracy and the history being made here this year. The oldest president, the gender and racial barriers broken by the new vice president. We begin with our White House correspondent, ABC's Karen Travers. Karen, good morning.
Good morning, Aaron, from the White House. Joe Biden today is going to be talking about unity. That is the main theme of his inaugural address. And if anybody paid any attention to his campaign over the past year, that is very familiar. He had that pledge out on the campaign trail to bring this nation together during an unprecedented time of crisis. Officials say that the speech from the president-elect will be forward-looking. His incoming press secretary said this morning, this is definitely not a speech about Donald Trump. Aaron, we should not expect much mention of Joe Biden's predecessor, but aides say he will be speaking to the moment the nation is in right now as he lays out a vision for the future. Aaron, the president, just a few moments ago, landed in Palm Beach, Florida, where he will now begin his post-White House life. He is not there at the Capitol today, of course, skipping the inauguration ceremony, the first president in more than 150 years to do that. But he looms large still, even though he is several states away. You know, think about the last 14 days. As you mentioned, the violence we saw 14 days ago, from an insurrection to an impeachment, and now here today with an inauguration. Just an incredible 2 weeks in the nation's capital.
Incredible indeed. And on this very spot that was overrun by that riotous mob, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, dressed in blue and on the arm of her husband, Doug Emhoff, is descending the steps, set to be introduced, where she will swear the oath of office and become the first woman and the first woman of color to be Vice President of the United States. 3 former presidents are standing, speaking with one another. President Obama, Clinton, Bush, all here with their spouses. There is a small cheer going up from the audience, the rather small audience seated in spaced out black chairs for this inauguration day in 2021. Karen, President-elect Biden spoke about the absence of President Trump. He didn't seem disappointed that he's not here.
No, in fact, Joe Biden said that it was one of the few things that he and President Trump have ever agreed on. He says it's a good thing, him not showing up. Joe Biden, after the election, had some, I think, increasingly critical words about President Trump. He said recently that he exceeded even his worst notions about him. So this is an inauguration unlike any other because of the COVID pandemic, the security situation, the president not being there, but they're trying to frame this in their own way and make this about Joe Biden and the moment for this country. And again, that emphasis on forward-looking, not talking about Donald Trump, but what Joe Biden will do once he takes office. And Aaron, he is hitting the ground running today with a lot of executive actions.
ABC's Karen Travers, our White House correspondent. Those executive actions come following this ceremony here at the Capitol, where Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman has been made an honorary Deputy Sergeant at Arms to accompany the Vice President-elect. He was just introduced by name. He was seen on a harrowing video leading that riotous mob away from the Senate chamber as he was chased up the steps. Today, he accompanies the Vice President-elect, who is being introduced now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Devi Harris, and Mr. Douglas Emhoff.
President-elect Kamala Harris, on the arm of her husband, Doug Emhoff, steps to the portico that is draped in red and waves to the crowd assembled here on the west front of the Capitol as she prepares to take the oath of office. She is a history-making, barrier-breaking vice presidential choice by President-elect Biden. And she now walks down the blue carpeted stage here, set to take her place in history and help the new president with his ambitious agenda. ABC's Molly Nagel, who covered the Biden campaign. Why do you choose Kamala Harris, Molly?
Kamala Harris was a choice for Joe Biden that many people speculated about pretty much from the moment that he became the Democratic nominee. She is somebody who has a close relationship with the Biden family through his son, Beau Biden. They served as attorney generals together, for him for Delaware, her for California, and really worked together and formed a close friendship and bond while doing so. And, Biden talked about when he picked her in August to be his running mate, that there was nobody's opinion he valued more than his son, Beau Biden's opinion. And so Kamala Harris having a strong opinion in Beau's opinion made her a good choice for him. And he has spoken about her having all of the qualities he thinks are needed to be president. So she was somebody who was long rumored to be in consideration and likely a pick for Biden. And they will now embark on becoming the 46th and 49th president and vice president of the United States.
You can see the smile behind the mask on the face of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris as she is greeted by the dignitaries already assembled here on the platform, including Vice President Pence, the only member of the Trump administration in attendance, as President Trump has landed just a few moments ago in Florida on his final ride aboard Air Force One. We're joined today by our political analyst, Steve Roberts, and White House correspondent emeritus, Ann Compton. And it's great to have you with us this morning and your thoughts on this extraordinary and rather unusual day.
It is unusual and unconventional, but I have covered Joe Biden for ABC News through most of his career. And, he comes to the presidency as someone who didn't need a tour of the Oval Office or the Situation Room. The economy was in crisis when he and Barack Obama took office 12 years ago. He had troops not on the Capitol lawn, but in two wars that became the nation's longest. And I'm wondering whether Biden, through his head, is set knowing today may be the easiest day of his entire presidency.
ABC News White House correspondent emeritus Ann Compton joining us for the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States. Indeed, and he faces a significant number of crises, with the nation reeling from the pandemic, the economic collapse, the violence that marred this place just 2 weeks ago. Steve Roberts, how's he going to handle it?
Well, I think we're going to hear a lot of words about unity, a lot of words about healing, a lot of words about coming together as a country. But as Karen said earlier, the legacy of Donald Trump looms very large. We've had 4 years of a president whose whole approach to politics has been to be divisive, to set up tribal warfare, us against them, red against blue. And it's going to be very difficult for him, but not impossible. I don't think. He spent 36 years in the U.S. Senate. It's a different place than he was. But when I covered him as a senator for many years, Joe Biden was at his core a pragmatist, at his core a deal maker. And I think he will bring that spirit of conciliation and compromise to his new job as president. And one of the real questions is he going to have a negotiating partner? We've seen in the last few days the Republican leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, signaling very clearly that he, as a Republican leader, wants to make a break with the Trump years. So it's going to be difficult, but not impossible, for Biden to find common ground with some Republicans. And there's another note to remember.
Rob Snow here. City News Ottawa. We will return very shortly to live anchored coverage courtesy of ABC News Radio and the inauguration of Joe Biden. This is City News.
Ottawa's High Bridge Construction.
inaugural ceremony is about to get underway here at the Capitol. A sparse crowd, socially distanced.
Please welcome the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Vice President Pence, Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, members of Congress and the judicial branch, former presidents and first ladies, vice presidents, leaders from abroad, and a whole bunch of Bidens. America, welcome to the 59th presidential inauguration, where in just a few moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their solemn oaths. This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy. It is the moment when leaders brought to this stage by the will of the people promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it? It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to witness this moment? I think not. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does: goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason. When Abraham Lincoln gave his first inaugural address in front of this Capitol, the dome was only partially constructed, braced by ropes of steel. He promised he would finish it. He was criticized for spending funds on it during the Civil War. To those critics, he replied, "If the people see the Capitol going on, it is a sign we intend the Union shall go on." And it did, and it will. Generations of Americans gave their lives to preserve our republic in this place. Great legislation to protect civil rights and economic security and lead the world was debated and crafted under this dome. Now it falls on all of us, not just the two leaders we are inaugurating today, to take up the torch of our democracy, not as a weapon of political arson, but as an instrument for good. We pledge today never to take our democracy for granted as we celebrate its remarkable strength. We celebrate its resilience, its grit. We celebrate the ordinary people doing extraordinary things for our nation, the doctors and nurses on the front line of this pandemic, the officers in the Capitol, a new generation never giving up hope for justice. We celebrate a new president, Joe Biden, who vows to restore the soul of America and cross the river of our divides to a higher plane. And we celebrate our first African American, first Asian American, and first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, who stands on the shoulders of so many on this platform who have forged the way to this day. When she takes the oath of office, little girls and boys across the world will know that anything and everything is possible. And in the end, that is America, our democracy, a country of so much good. And today, on these Capitol steps and before this glorious field of flags, we rededicate ourselves to its cause. thank you. It is now my honor to introduce to you the senator who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible, my friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt.
Well, I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning. Of all the things we'd considered, I don't think snow was on my agenda till I walked out the door a moment ago. But thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks to the other members of the Joint Congressional Committee on the inauguration as we officially begin the 59th inaugural ceremony. I also want to thank the Joint Committee staff and our partners, particularly our security partners, for the way they've dealt with unprecedented circumstances. When I chaired the inauguration 4 years ago, I shared President Reagan's 1981 description of this event as commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Americans have celebrated this moment during war, during depression, and now during pandemic. Once again, all three branches of our government come together as the Constitution envisions. Once again, we renew our commitment to our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union. That theme for this inauguration, our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union, was announced by the Joint Committee before the election with the belief that the United States can only fulfill its promise and set an example for others if we are always working to be better than we have been. The Constitution established that determined democracy with its first three words, declaring the people as the source of the government. The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words with the words,
and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buck, and right now in Ottawa, sunshine, minus 11 with a wind chill minus 21. Smiths Falls, some sunny skies and minus 10. The wind chill minus 17. Here's what's making news this hour. Happening now in Washington, D.C. It's Joe Biden's presidential inauguration ceremony underway. Biden swearing in the oath of office at noon. He will become the 46th president of the United States. The Democrat is prepared to take the helm of a deeply divided nation and inherit crises arguably greater than any faced by his predecessors. And history will be made at Biden's side as Kamala Harris becomes the first woman to be vice president. Vice President Mike Pence is representing the outgoing administration at the inaugural. President Donald Trump skipped the festivities, departing Washington earlier in the day. Air Force One with Donald Trump and his family aboard landed in Florida earlier today, an hour before the inauguration began. Trump hinted about a comeback before leaving Washington, telling his supporters at Joint Base Andrews, quote, "We will be back in some form," end quote. He says his presidency was an incredible 4 years and told the crowd he and his wife Melania loved them and praised his family for their hard work. Public Health Ontario reporting 86 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa, the number out of 2,655 new cases across Ontario, and 89 more deaths due to the virus. Over 54,000 tests were completed. Across Ontario, hospitalizations have decreased slightly. The number of patients in intensive care also down slightly. Elsewhere locally, 16 new cases in Eastern Ontario, 2 new cases of COVID-19 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and no new cases for Renfrew County and District. I'm Sarah Buchan. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The inauguration of Joseph R. Biden Jr.
Back to our live coverage.
According to our vision of equality, inclusion, and freedom for all. The President of these United States, that his administration may be conducted in righteousness and be eminently useful to your people. Today we confess our past failures to live according to our vision of equality, inclusion, and freedom for all. Yet we resolutely commit still more now to renewing the vision, to caring for one another in word and deed, especially the least fortunate among us, and so becoming a light for the world. There is a power in each and every one of us that lives by turning to every other one of us, a thrust of the Spirit to cherish and care and stand by others, and above all, those most in need. It is called love, and its path is to give ever more of itself. Today, it is called American patriotism, born not of power and privilege, but of care for the common good, with malice toward none and with charity for all. For our new president, we beg of you the wisdom Solomon sought when he knelt before you and prayed for an understanding heart so that I can govern your people and know the difference between right and wrong. We trust in the counsel of the letter of James. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Pope Francis has reminded us how important it is to dream together. By ourselves, he wrote, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Be with us, holy mystery of love, as we dream together. Help us under our new president to reconcile the people of our land, restore our dream and invest it with peace and justice and the joy that is the overflow of love. To the glory of your name, forever, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem, and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies and gentlemen, here for the singing of our national anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, please welcome Lady Gaga. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the City of South Fulton, Georgia Fire and Rescue Department, President of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3920, Fire Captain Andrea M. Hall, for the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What you are all about to be part of, America, is a historic moment of firsts. To administer the oath to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, it is my great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome Jennifer Lopez to perform This Land Is Your Land and America the Beautiful, accompanied by members of the President's own United States Marine Band.
Back to it here on City News.
Hi, my name is Mike Machargo, a licensed sales rep with Paul Rudd.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store, a popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself, and to see our brand name Papa Jack. And Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people.
Back to our live coverage.
That was great. Well, that was great. The sun is shining, and Mr. President-elect, this is the first inauguration in the history of America where J-Lo was the warm-up act for Chief Justice Roberts. With that, it is now my distinct honor to introduce the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, John Roberts, to administer the presidential oath to the next President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., do solemnly swear.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
Office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
My fellow Americans, a moment we have all been waiting for. It is now my great privilege and high honor to be the first person to officially introduce the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President Pence, and my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is America's day. This is democracy's day, a day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people, has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious. Democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime in service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken, the oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we, the people, who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far. But we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once-in-a-century virus that silently stalks the country has taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself, a cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January,